Hello, friends. I hope you're well today, and I have a treat for you today. We have such a great episode, just exactly what you guys have shared that you want on our surveys. I am thrilled to have Shane Birkel on for an episode about how men can actually open up in marriage. I'm excited. Shane is excited. He's a 7, so therefore you're going to have some good energy. But quite honestly, we both have a 9 part of us, and you can absolutely see that. In fact, I thought Shane was a 9, and he's actually got traits of both. Like some of you have multiple traits, obviously. And it was really cool to know he also had that 7 part, because I guess that's probably where his problem solving integrative practice comes in, and why I was drawn to his show about 4 or 5 years ago when I first heard about him. And you'll know from our notes, probably, or our newsletter, that he is the host of the Couples Therapist Couch Pod. And even if you're not a couples helper, I so recommend his show, because that is a place where, of course, you're going to see couples therapists doing their work, but also just learn so many great marriage techniques, which is what I know this audience wants. Well, I also want to name that, because we're talking about how men can open up, some of you may think, well, what was this for me? I'm a woman. I want you to make sure you stick around, not only because it's helpful to know how to relate to your guy, but also because we're going to go over the speaker listener technique. And it's a fantastic technique to give anyone tools. So before we jump into this cozy fall fun episode with Shane, I want to make sure you also sign up for his pod, and also just name that we have had such a cozy weekend. We had a lot of busy rhythms, but something I wanted to do was pull back, just clean my home, get settled. I actually just did a walk instead of Pure Barre, and I needed to just take some time to reorganize. It felt so good. And I've been listening to a book I wouldn't even normally give myself over to, and allowing myself to also have a fun finale party of Only Murders in the Building. So just wanted to share that fun little tidbit of our family's happenings. So we're doing that tonight, and we're having dips inspired by Martin Short's character, some quiche, some New York bagels, the whole vibe. And the best part, I have everyone voting on who done it on a murder board. So it's a cozy idea I wanted to share with you. If you are ending one of your favorite shows, this is a couples therapist, literal couch time idea. But obviously, if you're not a couples helper, I think it's a great idea too, to do something fun when you hit a finale of a show, because it's been 5 seasons. We've ripped through them. And you guys know I have 2 9-ish people in my family, and they've really brought us to that place of settling, watching shows, relaxing after the wildly busy ways that my husband and I tend to live as a 7 and a 1. So it's actually been a beautiful thing to have these 2 keeping us grounded. My daughter's going to be going from Twilight viewing party with her friends to this, and I'm just laughing like, okay, that is 9 fun. But definitely really want to jump into some real tips now, because guess what? We know when we come away from whatever it is, our workouts, our shows, our eating, all the fun things we do to replenish, we have to deal with actual life issues. What are we going to do about our kids? What are we going to do about our marriage? What are we going to do about this holiday issue coming up? And you know, I said we're going to do the real work today. So I'm excited because not only, like I said, is Shane somebody that I just found on my own. I was so happy when Melody was like, oh, do you want to be on his pod? I'll try to get you on. And then she did. And then he's here with us. And so make sure you also know he mentioned something mid-episode just before we bring him on. He says, make sure you tell me if you want to do an episode about women and how women can be people pleasers. So send me an email, send Melody at Enneagram and Marriage a message if you'd like to, either of us, and tell us if you want to do that. So excited to bring Shane on, guys. He has been in Men's Health, Cosmopolitan, USA Today, New York Times, has a private practice in New Hampshire, and he sparks change in people's lives. So let's welcome him and really learn from him together right now. Shane, I am so glad to have you on the Enneagram and Marriage podcast today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Christa. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness, you have been one of my top favorite people to have on, because I have listened to your podcast so many times and had the pleasure of being on as a recent guest too. Tell us about yourself. There's people here who know you. There's people here who don't know you yet. Of course, we want to hear about your pod, your family, and everyone's burning question at Enneagram and Marriage. What are your types, you and your wife?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. And my podcast is called The Couples Therapist Couch. And I am a couples therapist. I also work a lot with men, but it's usually around their relationships. And I teach a lot of couples therapists as well. I have the Couples Therapist Inner Circle, where I teach therapists how to work with couples. But,
Mhm.
one of the things I think is so amazing, and you came on my podcast, or we did the interview. I think it's coming out in like 2 weeks or something like that.
Yay! Awesome.
Yeah, but one of the things I think is I'm certainly not an Enneagram expert at all. I'm a little bit familiar with it, and one of the things that I think, I was thinking about this. There are so many things that I'm always trying to accomplish with couples
Hmm.
that I feel like the Enneagram would be good for. For example, just like moving into compassion for each other as opposed to holding on to the right and wrong way of doing things or something, right? Because if somebody's a
Hmm.
certain Enneagram number, it makes a lot of sense that they might be acting in a certain way. And it doesn't mean that they don't love you or care about you, but I think
Hmm.
things get misinterpreted all the time in relationships. And
Hmm.
having this is just one more way to sort of have that understanding. And I can talk a little bit more about other ways that I work with people and help people in moving into that compassion for each other.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for just naming that for this audience, especially those new listeners who may not really understand this great tool. In addition to, they're here for you as he's a couples therapist. He's going to talk about men opening up more, but you're just reminding us that these nuances matter. And I was even going over that about me and my husband something this weekend. And I was like, well, he's really in his Enneagram 3. And this is his way of succeeding and achieving. And so I can cheer him on. And that
Hmm.
helped me versus getting resentful about it. So I love
Great.
that you just named that because we scan negatively as humans. Now, what are you and your partner's type? Because I know you were battling that a little bit. I don't know if you've kind of
Hmm.
delineated or if you're still wondering.
Yeah, well, I should have taken the test again leading up to this, but we've tested out over the years both as sevens. And I feel like my wife is a lot more of a seven than I am. Um,
Mhm.
but I can definitely see the seven qualities in myself. But I was
Yeah.
also telling you, I feel like I have a strong nine
Mhm.
testing as well.
That is really neat. And as I think we talked about before on the side, when we find out our wings, our subtypes, those can make us look a little different by our types. Because if we're a self-pres 7 type, we might be a little less woo. Or if we're more of a social 7, we might be way out there with our joy. And we all have even days within where we're one or the other too. But you're
Hmm.
just saying my wife has more of that overt 7 joy. And you have
Hmm.
it, but it's more deeply seen or felt. And then I'm also hearing you say, which I perceived when I was a listener, the 9, the peacemaker. And so
Hmm.
that's really neat that you also recognize that that's a very big part of you, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's a huge part of probably most of us couples helpers, because if you
Hmm.
don't have a peacemaker part of you, watch out when you're with couples, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, for sure. And especially couples therapists, I imagine.
That's what I think too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, tell us about yourself in terms of just one of the biggest things you do is you work with helping men to open up. And that is something that you also mentioned that not only do you help with this, but it's actually something you've noticed and studies have shown us that it's often difficult for men to open up in therapy. So
Yeah.
what are you seeing as those big barriers that keeps men from opening up culturally or even in your sessions?
Yeah, it's interesting. And this will be really fun to have this conversation with you with your expertise because I remember when you were on the podcast with me, I was asking you about, how much do you think is nature versus nurture and that type of thing. And when I'm thinking about working with men, I think so much of the personality traits or character traits that a lot of men have come from the way in which we're socialized. And so that's a very sort of nurture
Mhm.
perspective. But,
Mhm.
it interests me because obviously people have very different personalities, but I think there are some common ways that people experience relationships and experience the present. And it doesn't apply to everybody, but
Mhm.
oftentimes men have a really hard, like they're taught from a very young age to disconnect from their emotional reality and to look for um, answers or solutions to problems rather
Mhm.
than being open to the discomfort of not knowing the answer, or being open to, this is just a difficult feeling and that's okay, sort of accepting
Mm-hmm.
someone else's difficult feeling. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think what happens in relationships is it often feels for their partner like there's a minimizing or an invalidation of their partner's experience, because a partner will bring up a feeling or a problem or something like that. And often a male partner, again, in general, a male partner might try to fix it or try to explain it away or become defensive, or there for some people there's a very protective part that doesn't want to be seen as a bad guy, and
Mm-hmm.
so they'll try to explain away to their partner why this they didn't mean what happened or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are some of the things that come up a lot, and it can be a challenge to sort of hold, valuing individual men, to see what a good person this is that I'm working with, and how much they're messing up the communication in the relationship, or
Mm.
how that can be an interesting thing to try to bring up with people, because it's important I think as a therapist that you can give them honest feedback about what's not working, and to be able to
Mm.
say, look, I see, like, you're such a good person, you're working so hard, there's so
Mm-hmm.
many good things that you're bringing to this relationship, but the way in which you're navigating this conversation is really harmful to what's going on for your partner or in the whole relationship together.
Mm, that's so powerful when men do their work with a helper, with a therapist who knows
Mhm.
what they're doing and can see past with compassion. This person isn't trying to hurt the other person, but their way of communicating and shutting off emotions absolutely is hurting them. And I like how you said there's so much nurture there. A statistic that we're always hearing out there, at least I am in the couples world, is that men have typically, although there's a variety, less estrogen and about 7 times as much testosterone. And that, even just that, often makes me take pause to think somebody might be coming in with more energy around a certain area or get frustrated differently. Has that ever been part of your thought life as well with your couples?
It's interesting. It's not something that I know a lot about. And
Mm.
I talked to John Gray, who was the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From
Yeah.
Venus, and he
Hmm.
talked a lot about the testosterone and the estrogen, the different ways that that plays into things. And absolutely, and again, just like the Enneagram, it's just another way for us to look at, like, there's no bad guys here. There's
Yeah,
no
there
right
you
or
go.
wrong. It's sort
Hmm.
of like, hey, there might be reasons why it makes sense that each partner is behaving in the way that they are, right? And
Hmm.
even again, and I don't want to keep saying this over and over, but I think
Yeah.
it's important. Like, not all men fall into the same category. Not
Right.
all women
I
fall
do
into the
think
same
that's important to
category.
say. Yes.
So, but that being said, there are things like there are natural things like that that exist in a lot of partnerships where there's one male and one female. And
Hmm.
that testosterone, estrogen definitely comes into it, and I
Hmm.
think it's helpful for us to take a step back and just look at, there's when couples are struggling, there's
Hmm.
often this mindset that comes about, and it almost feels like my partner's the enemy,
Hmm.
or if I give in to my partner, I'm going to become a doormat or
Yeah.
something like that.
Hmm.
And there's this sort of like mutual empowerment that I think is important to seek. Like, how do I move into understanding and compassion of my partner's reality and
Hmm.
their authentic self, and realize that it doesn't take away from me being empowered and having a voice for what I want and what's important to me and my authentic reality.
Mm. That's important for our men out there to hear. They're allowed to set boundaries so that they can make decisions and so that their partner can. Because I think a lot of men have come into our world from, I know, studying world history with my son, power over and dominance. And you're really
That's right.
reminding that it's so much better to come alongside and to say, hey, this isn't working for me. We need to look at what boundaries we need around this or that versus this usurping. And just, I think you're bringing us all to that really great starting place for today's conversation to say, look at your story, look at your backstory, look
Hmm.
at your lay down some arms, right? Like we both might have some weapons and defenses up, thinking we're the hero, they're the villain. And even look at
Hmm.
your hormones, because I used to think John Gray didn't have much to teach until doing 20 years of couples work. And then I'm like, okay, there are patterns I see a lot with couples that are making me feel that men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
Hmm.
So I think that again, we're all agreeing that's not always the case. And Enneagram really, really puts legs on that not always being the case. But still,
Hmm.
I think it's worthy to at least start there with, like you said, that just brings out compassion that nobody's the enemy. So if we can get there, and I think we're probably all trying to get there, taking our deep breaths to realize, okay, they're not the enemy. When we do want men to open up, when he can move from that defensive, that's not fair space response to actually being able to hear his partner, what helps them to do that? What is, other than just saying they're not the villain, I'm not the hero? What's
Hmm.
something you've seen that actually helps men to start that move from defensiveness?
Well, yeah, I guess we should dive right in. I mean, I think fundamentally it comes down to feeling worthy or feeling valuable, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
enough and I matter. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that there are different ways that women struggle with that versus men in general. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think a lot of times what men make up, like the story, right, that you were meant, like the story that men make up about their worthiness is
Mm-hmm.
about, like, am I being a good provider? Am I being a good protector? Am I being a good dad? Am I being a good partner to my, to my romantic partner?
Mm-hmm.
And so if somebody brings into question any of those things, and there's often sort of, and this is for men and women both, I think there's a socialization of perfectionism in our society. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
you don't do, if you don't do it perfectly, then there's something wrong with you. And so anytime, let's say that there's a husband and a wife, and the
Mm-hmm.
wife is saying, it made me really upset that you were late the other day. you
Mm-hmm.
know Oftentimes there's this huge protect, if that guy isn't very grounded in his own worthiness as a
Mm-hmm.
partner, he might feel really insecure about that and feel really uncomfortable with that. And I think men are more likely to feel that because they're taught that it's, you need to fix problems. You need to not be vulnerable. You need to be strong. You need to overcome. And so, if you made a mistake in this area, your partner's bringing it up. There's it goes into this shame, this feeling of shame about, like,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm not a good husband. And
Mm-hmm.
most men have such a protection around that. They feel so uncomfortable about the shame. They bounce up into something like grandiosity, or feeling like, well, I'm not the problem, you're the problem, or
Mm-hmm.
or being defensive in other ways, or trying to explain it away. And so, if when I say, there's a man being grounded in his own value or self-esteem or something like that, my partner can tell me, I'm really upset that you were late yesterday. And I
Mm-hmm.
might be able to take a deep breath and say, I'm enough and I matter and I make mistakes. And how can I move into compassion and understanding and accountability
Mm-hmm.
for my partner, and say, oh my gosh, it makes sense that you were upset that I was late, because you were expecting me at a certain time. I told you I was going to be there and then I wasn't. And that really
Mm-hmm.
sucks. And I messed up on this one.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that takes that foundation of valuing myself as a person. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad person just because I make mistakes. Now, again, the accountability is important, and we can
Mm-hmm.
talk more about that. It doesn't mean that I'm just don't care about the other person. I'm like, oh, yeah, sure, I wasn't on time. Sorry that was hard for you. I'm not saying it like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But there's a way of, and again, when I work with people, I'm often exploring limiting beliefs that they took on as a child, because that's what gets triggered oftentimes in present day relationships. What are the ways in which, growing up in your family or growing up in your society, you were taught that you were supposed to be a good boy or to be a good girl or to be a good
Mm.
person,
Mhm.
that we all carry some of those beliefs into our present day reality, and oftentimes it makes us feel really stressed or overwhelmed if we feel like we're not living up to those expectations we make up in our mind.
Mm. Yeah, I think we're starting to learn that, but I think it's slow because I think from baby boomers down, you're right. When I look at what baby boomers were reading, largely as children, it was things like the Hardy Boys, the Bobbsey twins, like they were, Leave It to Beaver. There was all these reruns on Nick at Night for people like that, or even on, and they were getting fed perfect boys and girls do it this way. And so I think that the
Yeah.
parents back then were a little more hands off, silent generation. And then that was what they were left with. And now we're starting to decipher and dissect no one's perfect. But like you said, we even still have this sheen over us to this day. So that
Hmm.
makes a lot of sense why we're seeing men stay there because they're not socialized as much with this nurturing information like, oh, it's okay to make mistakes. You can be able to cry. And so, is that
Hmm.
something you help men to identify in your work then? Is that, like you said, limiting beliefs and maybe even that they're allowed to have emotions?
Yeah. When you were talking, I just thought of something else too, which goes along with your question. Like,
Hmm.
let's imagine that there's a little 7-year-old girl and she experiences bullying at school, and she
Hmm.
comes home and tells her parents, I'm really sad because I was being bullied at school.
Yeah.
Now, there's research that backs this up. I don't know. I don't have any of it in front of me,
Yeah.
but a little 7-year-old girl is much more likely to get a reaction from her parents of compassion, of,
Mm.
"Oh my gosh, let me give you a hug. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry you're sad. Like, let's talk
Mm.
about what happened," and perhaps even be more protective of her
Yeah.
if they need to take action with a teacher or something like that. Now, same situation, a little 7-year-old boy comes home. He's much more likely to receive a different. And oftentimes it's very subtle,
Mm.
right? It still could be caring parents,
Yeah.
but they're much more likely to say, "Hey, um, what are you going to do next time it happens?" Right? Like
Yeah.
to take an intellectual approach, or
Mm.
to take a sort of like, "How are you going to deal with this if it comes up? If it comes up again?" Or,
That's a
"Hey,
good point.
you." It could even be, "Sorry that happened, but
Hmm.
um, not much we can do about it."
Mm.
And there's less emotional connection. There's less
Yeah.
acceptance of those vulnerable emotions. So
Yeah.
again, a belief a little boy might take on is, when I feel sad, it doesn't really help to bring it up with anybody.
Mm.
And in some situations, depending on the parent, like every parent, each set of parents are different, or each individual parent is different. And so another thing that a little boy might take on is, a good little boy just keeps these emotions to himself. A
Mm.
good little boy, I don't want to be a burden on my mom and dad, so I'm going to not talk about it when I'm sad or upset.
Mm.
And eventually, by the time kids are 7 or 8 years old, they just lose connection to their own emotional reality because they haven't been encouraged to connect to it.
Mm.
And by the time someone's 40 and they're showing up in couples therapy, oftentimes they're wondering, like, why do I have such a hard time feeling my emotions and connecting to my emotions? Oftentimes, oftentimes there's a belief that had been implanted, um, nobody intended to, but this belief for that person that being a good little boy means not having emotions.
Mm. Yeah. I really think a lot of listeners that are males are really resonating with that. And I think a lot of their wives or partners are saying, thank you, because that is not the reality for most of us females. Even if there wasn't a parent doing that, there's some adult in our lives usually nurturing us, coaxing us on. Whereas oftentimes, we know on a football team, even I was at USF football team with my girls. I mean, and my husband and son this weekend, and they're like going crazy, and just like the men are beating their chest and acting like warriors, and it's fun, but of course, it's not the soft, like, oh, it's like, let's go kick some butt. And so
Yeah.
I think that that's, going to translate, even if it's not quite that intense, there's going to be some of that. And so,
Yes.
even culturally, right? Like we've had to have societies where there was this hard protector while a woman was soft and having a baby. And so, for all of these reasons and more, you're saying there's going to be this disconnect a lot of times by the time they
Yes.
land there. But you already said, which I love that you already gave a very tangible tip of taking a deep breath and reminding yourself, this is not because you're being villainized. This is your opportunity to grow and to soften. And so I think that's a good place to start. And you also have a great technique that you shared in one of your recent newsletters that I loved about the speaker
Mhm.
listener. And I think some of our couples might benefit from that too. Could you share that for us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Is
great.
US is that you Southern Florida?
Yeah. Yeah.
Aren't they really good this year?
Yeah.
Feel like
Yeah.
I've
Oh,
heard
yeah.
about them.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
getting better. They're like top 50 schools now for research, Division 1 in that way. But their
Oh, that's
football
awesome.
team really did
Yeah,
well
their
too.
football team's really good this year. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. No, I no, and I think so. So I'd love to talk about the speaker listener technique.
Okay, great.
But I think there was something else you were saying. Um, and again, there are different woundings for girls and women, and we could have a
Yeah.
whole other conversation about that.
Yeah.
But there's different ways. Oftentimes women are socialized not to have a voice about what they
Yes.
want and what they need, and they become people pleasers, and they become just making sure everybody else is happy.
Hmm.
And on the flip side of that, oftentimes men lose their connection to their emotions, right? And like you were saying with the football team, I think that's a good analogy. It's sort of or it's sort of like the knight in shining armor kind of
Hmm.
mindset. Like I'm going to go out and slay the dragons, or I'm going to go out and score touchdowns, or I'm going to go get a job where I make a lot of money and be successful. I'm going to go do something to prove my worth and become successful as a man. And then I will be worthy and deserving of the love of a princess, right?
Hmm.
It's like an old, story that I
Hmm.
think keeps people stuck. And again, there are different things that the princess is supposed to do in order to accomplish worthiness. And
Hmm.
I think it's a setup because anyone who's been in a long-term relationship knows that once you get into it, there's a lot more nuance to it, and there's a lot more struggle, and everything you thought that was going to work might not be feel as easy as you thought it was,
Yeah.
and or go as smoothly, right? It requires a lot more, and so that's the other thing. Just to help people move into compassion, like you're sold that story. It makes sense
Hmm.
that when you get into a real relationship, it's hard because none of us are taught relationship skills. And
Hmm.
so it's good to take a step back and to say, again, we said it earlier, but there's some reason why it makes sense that we're struggling in the particular way that we are. It's not because
Hmm.
either one of us is a bad person.
Yeah.
And how do we move into that compassion, that valuing myself and valuing my partner and being
Hmm.
understanding of them? And then, you know, um, I'll move into the question of how do we use the skills, right?
Hmm.
The speaker listener is one really good way of helping people sort of be accountable about how they're communicating with each other. Because I think there's this really, so I would look at the speaker listener communication as sort of the surface level, like what's happening when we're communicating.
Hmm.
Now, and I'll talk through it and explain it, and it keeps people speaking really respectfully to each other
So good.
and owning their stuff. So, but on a deeper level, it's sort of like what's coming up for me that makes it hard to use this strategy, right? And this is something therapy can be really helpful with. It's sort of like
Hmm.
when we try to use this communication strategy, why do we continue to get stuck? Or why do we
Hmm.
continue to go into old habits where we're blaming or we're criticizing or we're being defensive or stonewalling or all of the things that start happening when people communicate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but it is helpful to know, like, okay, I have good intentions. I want to
Mm-hmm.
communicate well with my partner. How can we set this up in a way that works better, right? And one
Mm-hmm.
of the things I talk about a lot is making a commitment to being fully respectful at all times with everyone in your life, including yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Usually we're the most harmful in our own mind to ourself.
Wow.
We would
Yeah.
say things to ourselves that we would never say to anyone else. You know, like, you're such an idiot. Why do you keep
Mm-hmm.
messing up? What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to start with that full respect living for yourself. And again, that
So
goes
true.
back to valuing yourself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I am a human being who makes mistakes, and I'm a good person, and I'm trying really hard. And
So good. So important because even when somebody else can give us a compliment, we can go, "Oh, that was nothing." And like when you do it, I'm
yeah,
proud of you. When I do it, And so I love that you just said, include yourself in this respect, your spouse and yourself
absolutely,
and others.
absolutely. So the way to keep communication clear and not muddy the waters, so to speak, is that anything that I say about anything that I is going on for me is valid for my experience,
Mm,
right? But how do I explain to my partner something that they're doing that's driving me crazy,
hmm
that without making it feel like blame or judgment or criticism? Because I would say all blame or criticism toward another human being is disrespectful or not healthy to a relationship and not necessary.
mm.
So
So
anytime I want
helpful.
to say something to another human being, there's a
Mm,
way I can do it in a way that's respectful, even if I need to set firm boundaries. But I'm
so
going to
good.
make a really strong effort to speak from the first person. This is my reality, my experience. So this is
Mm,
the role of the speaker, is to make sure they are speaking from the first person. Make sure they're saying, and there are a few phrases that are really helpful. Let me go over the roles of the listener really
okay.
quickly,
Perfect.
before I get into more detail on each one. But the listener is a harder job. The
Mm,
listener's job is to make it all about the speaker's reality, right? So in order to not muddy the waters, we're approaching this from the standpoint that there are two individual human beings here that both have a valid perspective and valid feelings about what's going on in the situation. Because
mhm,
where couples run into trouble is they try to have right and wrong conversations,
mhm,
and they try to convince each other why what the other person is feeling doesn't make any sense.
mm,
You know, or it could
mhm.
be even more passive than that,
Yeah.
you know, where, you know, um, my partner could walk in at the end, let's say we both worked all day. We come home at the end of the day. My partner walks in. I'm hoping that they'll give me a hug and say,
Mhm.
"How was your day?" But they walk right past me and go, you know, who knows, go into the other room. And
Yeah.
and and I'm thinking to then I'm like, I'm feeling bad. I'm like, oh my gosh, they didn't want to give me a hug. I'm making up
Mhm.
all this meaning in my mind. What does that
Right.
mean? Did I do something wrong? Are
I've
they
done
mad at
that. Yes.
me? You know?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and so oftentimes what we do is we approach our partner, and there's all kinds of different versions of unhealthy communication. I could be very overtly mean about it and say, what's wrong with you that you didn't want to come hug me when you came home, right? Which is sort
Mhm.
of blamey and
Mhm.
criticizing what they did. Or I could be much more passive. I could be sort of passive aggressive and
Mhm.
just say sort of like, well, I guess you have a lot to do tonight, or
Mhm.
something like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Or I could just say something like, I can't believe that you didn't hug me when you came in. And again, it sounds like I'm speaking from the first person,
Mhm.
but that sort of implies the same message of what's wrong with you that you didn't hug me when you came in, right? And so
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
goal is, how do I so if I'm the speaker, right? If I feel hurt because my
Mhm.
partner didn't hug me, it's an opportunity for me to become the speaker in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that I want to do that is, first of all, I want to get consent from from them. Are they ready to be the listener? So
That's
maybe
good.
they walk by me, they go in the other room. Maybe I give it 20 minutes. It's probably good to give it a little time for me to take a deep breath.
Mm-hmm.
And but then I could say, hey, I know we're just getting home from work, but is this a good time for you to be a listener for 5 minutes? So I want to get that consent that they're ready to be in that role because, like I said, being a listener is a hard thing to do. The listener's going to work really hard to make it all about the speaker's perspective and their reality. It's not about figuring out who's right or wrong. It's simply about making them feel understood. So,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a speaker, I want to approach that, ask for consent, and then I want to stay really true to my experience. I want to say, what happened for me was you came in the door
Mm-hmm.
and you walked into the other room.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm not saying it in a way that's criticizing. I'm simply explaining what happened so we have the context as a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
The next step might be the story I told myself or where I went in my head, right? What I made up about that was that you weren't happy to see me. I told myself a story that happy couples love to give each other a hug when they come home from work. And because you didn't want to do that, it made me feel like there was something wrong.
Mm. That's good.
And then I'm getting into my own feeling reality. I felt like there was something wrong. I felt really hurt. I felt really sad. And I felt kind of worried.
Mm.
I wasn't sure. I
Yeah,
felt like we didn't have our usual foundation.
that's good. I love
Um,
that. That's so soft and generous. And I'm taking a note on that because it's so different from what we want to say if we don't take that, like you said, little bit of time to get our thoughts together.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you can imagine if I walked up to my partner and I said, I can't believe you didn't give me a hug, right? In a certain tone
Right.
that's sort of
It's just like
blamey.
so appalling, right?
Yeah. And criticizing, even in just in the tone. Like
Hmm.
that's going to make my partner roll their eyes and feel more
Hmm.
disconnected, maybe go into defensiveness. It's
Hmm.
not going to make them want to have compassion for me,
Hmm.
right? As opposed to how I was just saying it to you when I'm using the skills and I'm
Hmm.
trying to come from owning it.
Hmm.
The hope is that they're going to want to lean in. They're going to say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know that all that was going on inside your mind. Come
Hmm.
here, let me give you a hug." Maybe they'll just,
Yeah,
maybe it's as simple as that, right? Come
right.
here, let me give you a hug. I didn't know that was happening.
Right.
Um, and I think it's important that people have conversations about like what are the expectations too, because my partner might feel like to be in a loving, healthy relationship means that we can come home at the end of the day and we don't have to talk to each other and we can give each other space and we can have alone time and we're still confident in the love for each other.
Yeah.
Whereas I might have a story in my mind that in a loving, healthy relationship, it means that we want to spend every second together when we come home at the end of the day, right? Those are different meanings. And
Hmm.
both of us have the goal of having a loving, healthy relationship, but like we might have very different, and this could have, play into what your Enneagram type is as well.
Hmm.
But if we're not having an open conversation about what do I want versus what
Hmm.
does my partner want, it's going to be very like then we're making up a lot more meaning that's usually not a good thing. So we want to
Hmm.
eliminate the making up thing as much as possible by communicating openly. And this requires vulnerability because then I can't just tell my
Hmm.
partner they're doing something wrong. I have to own it and I have to say, "Hey, this is important to me. Hey, this makes me feel sad or this makes
Hmm.
me feel hurt." And
Hmm.
the other thing is that it's not my partner's job to fix that necessarily. No, they can be loving and supportive and try to do certain things that work. But just because you express what you want doesn't mean you're going to get it, even in a relationship. And that could
Mm-hmm.
be a whole other conversation. But
That's
if
true.
I'm so to go back to the communication, if I'm overwhelmed and upset, it's an opportunity for me to become the speaker. And so I'm going to try to use the speaking from the first person in those ways that I did. And if the other person's ready to be the listener, their job is to, meet that with compassion, with curiosity. Curiosity is a wonderful thing in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
A wonderful thing in relationships.
Right.
Um,
Especially versus making assumptions like,
yeah,
oh, it must be that time of the month. Because I earlier talked about male hormones, but I forgot to talk about the female side that we often
yeah,
see, or may do a quick bypass, um, or a quick just. I tried to do this the other day erroneously with my husband, but when he said something, can't remember what it was, but I remember going, I'm just going to do a quick emotional bypass. And I said that to myself. I go, because I want to watch our show tonight. So
yeah.
type seven, just like, let me do this really fast. I want to get to my show. I've had a long day. And he's like, hold on. Like, what did you just say? Like, you just, let's parse this out. And I was like, oh, I really didn't even mean it. I just said it to kind of quickly do the work. So I hear you saying
Oh,
if you're
yeah.
going to be the listener, you need to really pause. And that's something that came back to me too, was not just trying to get done, which again goes back to Enneagram type.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the other thing is sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Hmm.
Right? Like you could have moments with your husband where you just try to get it done really quickly and it's fine.
Yeah,
And you're
exactly.
like,
Sometimes
okay,
that
now we can
works.
watch our show. This that worked out.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's why it's so important to give each other feedback because there's not a right or wrong, but
Right.
it's sort of like it's important for your husband to have the opportunity to say, hey, when you did it this way, it didn't work really very well for me, right?
Hmm.
Or, hey, I noticed you did it this way today, and that works much better for me, right? Like, it's
Hmm.
so important for couples to like give each other feedback.
Yes.
Um, and oftentimes people take feedback as criticism, right? So
Yeah.
even if you're the speaker and you're using these skills in the way that I described it, the other person could still perceive it as criticism. And again, this is
Hmm.
where
Yeah.
their past history comes into play, their Enneagram type, all of these different, parts of their personality and their character.
Hmm.
If you're trying, and this is where therapy could be really helpful. If
Hmm.
you're working really hard to communicate in a fully respectful way using the skills and it's
Hmm.
still a challenge, you know, it's something to be curious about.
That is so true. And just if you can't do, like, we got to the place as a therapist and somebody living with one for a while. Although we do have our therapist, we just got to the place where we were able to talk with, it was something about one of our kids. So we talked it out as a family, got to that place, and we were able to really fully get to the place where we were all like, okay, this was the miscommunication about this child. Let's finish this beautifully from start to finish. Was it perfect? No. You already heard me say I was bypassing, but like sometimes we get stuck, really stuck. And in these
Uh,
moments, I do like what you said that it really can be really sticky to do this technique. So you're just allowing that if this is you out there listening, feeling a bit hopeless, my spouse wouldn't do that work. They wouldn't have any self reflective compassion toward me. Then sometimes just having that third party can help with at least the early stages of that bypassing we do if we're not
yeah.
willing to look at it ourselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when there's a good foundation for a couple, I'll just stick with the example I gave where we come home from work, my wife didn't give me a hug.
Hmm.
I'm making up all kinds of meaning about that, feeling upset.
Hmm.
What if I went into the other room and said, "Hey, I'm really upset," and my wife said, "I'm exhausted. I'm not in a place where I can listen right now." Right? That's important. That's important for people to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And if you have a really good foundation, there's sort of this realization, like what coping. Well, first of all, what coping strategies do I have for myself at that
Hmm.
moment?
Hmm.
Can, uh, apart from depending on my partner, that I can go take a walk, or I can meditate, or I can listen to music, or I can, just breathe and take care of myself. And
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, like, maybe we can still watch our show together that night. And
Mm-hmm.
the reality is, I might just be like, hey, like, I do still really want to talk about this. Maybe we can do it tomorrow. But
Mm-hmm.
I understand if, you're too tired tonight to
Mm-hmm.
do that.
That's so
And
respectful.
yeah. And I think there's this saying that's about like never go to bed angry.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really agree with that, because I think people need to go to bed. It's probably more
Right. They
important,
are so
you know.
tired that that's part of
Yeah.
it too.
Yeah, exactly. Because like I hear people come into couples therapy sometimes and they're like,
Yeah.
we were arguing for 5 hours until
Yeah.
2 o'clock in the morning. And
Because
I'm like, what were you talking about for 5 hours? It's like, when you get to like 30 minutes and
mm-hmm.
you're still struggling and you're still not feeling heard, like you
Mm-hmm.
should probably check in and say, do we need to take a break? Like let's
Mm-hmm.
like take a break from this and breathe. And in my mind, it's more important that you both go to bed and try it again tomorrow than it is like try to come to some sort of resolution. And
Right.
and
Yeah,
I
you may
think
be able to go, I'm compassionate and I get that they have a different perspective, and that I think is more doable. But to
yeah,
say it's fully resolved, to say I'll never want justice for something important that feels like it's going to be a rift every day, like agreed. Like sometimes we're fresher at different, like as we know with Enneagram and other things, like different times of the day work better for different people. So I like that part of the inherent structure in your speaker listener technique, whether it's guys or otherwise, is is this a good time? Because that is
yes.
so much more important than like it be right before bed, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Yeah, and I
so
think
good.
I think there's like you brought up the topic of parenting, right? I mean, if you have kids, that's something that you're going to have to return to multiple times over the years, and
Mm-hmm.
things are going to change, and there's going to be different things, and
Mm-hmm.
you might not be getting your way today as a parent, but you know, hopefully I can still have a voice about what's going on, and it's sort of like um, I think of it like having a store. A lot of people have like a storage room with a bunch of those Rubbermaid bins in it, and there's
Mm-hmm.
all these different topics that we
Mm-hmm.
have in our couple relationship. Like
Mm-hmm.
parenting, finances,
Mm-hmm.
sex, whatever those different topics are that we struggle with, and we might continue to feel hurt sometimes about different aspects of those. But it's like, can we put them all away in our storeroom? Like, if we have a Saturday where we're just hanging out with the family and everybody wants to just have a good time, can we kind of put everything away in the storeroom? And is there enough of that foundation with each other that we can enjoy being with each other, hang out, have fun, and we have enough confidence that, hey, we're gonna have to bring up this parenting topic again this week, but like, and we can bring it down from the shelf and we can open it up and we can
Mm-hmm.
take a look inside, and that's going to
Yeah.
be hard.
Yeah.
It's going to bring up all that stuff, but at the
Yeah.
end of it, can we figure out how to close it up, put it back in? It's still going to be there, but how do we have that loving,
That's so
connected
good.
relationship,
Yes.
day in and day out along the way?
So good. And I know that for those like me who want to get it all done now, sometimes we might go too fast if we think we need to. And I even
Yeah.
did that with my adult daughter yesterday. We were walking up to a Boo Festival for Halloween at our church, and she goes, "By the way, I have to tell you something that happened to me." And I literally went into my type 6 tailspin and I go, "What is it?" And she's like, "Oh, it's just something that happened." And I go, "Okay, can you just put me in the ballpark?" And like, because I was like, she's shelving me, and then like we're walking away from each other for hours. And it just like hit me like, stop pressing this girl. Like, just take a deep breath. She's fine. And then she
Yeah.
even was gracious enough to give me the topic. And I was like, oh, that's no big deal. Okay, I'll see you later. But like, I'm trying to do that in my marriage too. And I used to be so neurotic in that way that my husband would say something on the way home, or I would have an issue. And then I'd be like, we're talking on the way home, and I'm like, we have to solve it right now. So by the time he gets home, everything is positive positive. And I think for listeners who tend toward that, like me, the heart is there. The anxious attachment in us wants to get it done now so that we can have a good life. But to
Yeah.
be able to give it justice, like you said, it's more deep breaths. It's us saying, okay, are we secure? If we are, putting it away. If we're not, doing the therapy. And then I know we're ending on time soon, but I just want to
Mm.
mention to you just quickly, like ask you, for men, it feels like we're even saying there's even a bit more of a layer sometimes, right? Because of this cultural,
Mhm.
you should have fixed it. You should fix it really quickly. You shouldn't be disrespected. Make sure you're the authority here. You should be the dominant one. Like, is the deep breath the biggest tip for the guy that you would say? Because I just want to make sure we at least help them to know, like, one thing you've maybe done to work on this or some of your male clients.
Yeah, the deep breath is an opportunity. There might be another message to go along with it, right? When I
Yeah,
take the
so
deep
good though.
breath,
Hmm.
it's like that I'm breathing in my own value as a human being. I'm a
Hmm.
good husband, I'm a good dad, I'm doing my best. And sometimes my family members or people important to me are going to be upset, and
Hmm.
that's okay. It's not my job to fix it. I can be supportive, I can be helpful, but how do I just take a deep breath and just try to stay in that curiosity before I rush to, feeling like I did something wrong or feeling like I need to fix it right away or something like that.
Mm, that's so good. Just
Uh,
letting yourself and go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say it's like creating space. Maybe that's part of it. How do I create space for myself? And this is so important. This is a male female thing too.
Hmm.
I feel like I'm having this conversation with lots of male partners because their female partner wants to feel that emotional space, and it's almost like how do you create safety? Like as a human being, we're all going through life feeling all kinds of emotions all the time,
Hmm.
right? And how do I give my partner permission to feel whatever it is they're feeling and not need to control it or fix it or whatever? But it's just sort of like,
Mm,
how do I create
yeah.
space for them to feel like it's okay to be them as a person? And if they want help in fixing something, you can be there for them, but be patient. Just create the space first. Use that curiosity, use that validation. Oh, it makes sense that you're feeling this right now. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
and try to just be soft and open with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so good. And pairing that with Enneagram is such a win because
Yeah.
even thinking back to these examples we gave, different types with the hug or different types, like my daughter being a four, she kind of likes the push pull. So she was like, Mom, something's wrong, but you're not going to get it right now. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
don't do the testing, but like that's our dynamic. And so it's like knowing that I'm like, oh, that makes me smile and see, she just wants to make sure she's loved before we part ways. Can I tell
Yeah.
you about something later? And it's not even a big deal. It's just she wants to know I'm a safe person later. Or, like you said to
Hmm.
guys, like your wife maybe didn't want the fix, but she just wanted to know you were there listening.
Yeah.
And that is so good. And that's why your show is such a success. And you have integrated so many great parts of couples therapy. I could talk to you all day about this. I want to honor your time and I want to point our listeners to you because not only do you help those who are couples helpers, but you just help us with marriage tips all the time and relationship tips. So, can you tell everybody where they can find you in your awesome show?
Yeah, absolutely. It's called the couplestherapistcouch.com. And you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts like Spotify or Apple iTunes. And, I was creating a lot of videos on TikTok and Instagram just about giving
Mhm.
people relationship advice and things like that. And I've gotten away from it lately, but there's a lot of content there. If anybody, that's more for people who want to improve their relationships. And definitely the podcast, I get a lot of it is for therapists to learn how to work with couples, but I get a lot of feedback that people listen to it just to improve their relationship as well.
Yeah. I see that. I do that. Guys, this is so good. Thank you so much, Shane. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Krista. Yeah, this is a great conversation.
Guys, what a joy it was to get to talk about men opening up. Tell us if you also want to hear about women with Shane, but also the speaker listener technique. I'm really moved by that observation of taking the deep breath. You know I am, because you know I move fast, and just allowing ourselves to be regulated before we jump in with trying to fix too fast, heal too quickly, or do it all at once. Guys, take your time, give each other that grace. Make sure you follow Shane. Make sure you have so much fun doing little fun fall parties with your family if you're that time of year where you just need a cozy couch time in the middle of the busy holidays coming up. And thank you for being here. Thank you for working so hard to learn to communicate, to open up, to really hear your partner. We've loved doing this journey with you. We'll keep doing the journey together. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you again for listening with us. It was so wonderful to have you. I love knowing we're doing this journey together, not perfectly, but with love, grace, and hopefully some fun too. If you loved today's episode, make sure you leave us a 5-star review at Apple Podcast or Spotify so others can find it too. Visit our show notes so you can get all the links from today's show, as well as enneagramandmarriage.com, the Instagram, the Facebook, and all over the place. Make sure you spread the word. Love living intentionally with you. Bye-bye.